What I'm going to explain in this video is really the exact reason behind, in the past 5 years, how I've been able to launch 3 multiple 8-figure companies that have all not exceeded just $1 million a month, but even $2 million a month and more in revenue. And it really comes down to attracting and retaining superstar entrepreneurial talent in your companies that can actually drive growth without you. So you could really step out of your business and have an asset that produces you cash flow independent of your time. So I'm going to splice over to this presentation now. Hope you guys enjoy. So we'll talk about stars and superstars and the difference of that. We're going to talk about how superstars can help you hit different inflection points of growth. I'm going to chart our company's growth. I'm going to show you what's happened when we've added certain key people to our team. Okay? We're going to talk about how you find them, how you pay them, my story in terms of how I've been successful with this. The issue with this presentation is I wish I could give you a step-by-step, ABC playbook on how to find true superstars. 8 players, I could tell you, step-by-step how to find people like that. Superstars are very different. They're very, very tough to come by, even for us. So what I can do is try to tell my story and things that have worked for me in terms of recruiting these people. And then most importantly, how to become a leader of superstars. So what are superstars? So every new level of growth is generally going to be unlocked by adding a superstar player to your team. So probably all you guys follow Alex Hormozi, right? And Layla Hormozi. So with their companies, one of the things they always say, and this is what they do when they try to bring people in, is they always try to usually add one key player, right? And there might be already some existing superstars on the team, but they're usually one superstar away and one higher from an explosive amount of growth. And I'm talking like, it's not adding a couple $100,000 a month to your business. I mean, this could be the difference between doing, for us, I'll give you an example later, $2.5 million a month to $4 million a month, so makes a huge difference. So there's stars and superstars, both are essential. What's the difference? Okay. So the difference between stars and superstars. Stars are highly ambitious A players, and that's what most of you guys, everybody probably has a few stars on their team. A lot of your team should be made up of stars. Superstars, the big difference, and a lot of this is inspired, if you hear the difference between stars and superstars, you had Ready, Fire, Aim. A lot of this I'm getting from Mark Ford, co-founder of Agora, over $1 billion company in the info space. But superstars can autonomously drive or unlock growth in your business, okay? Drive, because a lot of times these folks are going to be in marketing and sales or growth type roles. But sometimes it's unlocking the growth because it makes a huge difference in terms of maybe you weren't able to scale until something was off your plate, etc. So we'll give you some examples later. Can we go next, please? So some characteristics. Here's a big one. They can grow the company without needing direct effort from you, okay? Or even encouragement from you. So what I mean by this is I'll give you an example. And in the early phases, a lot of the growth was just 100% just muscled by me. I have a few superstars on my team now, and especially since we have 2 companies, I find that it's very, very hard for me personally to put my growth-related effort into growing both of them at once. So a lot of times, I'm kind of maintaining on one, we're trying to grow the other, get the one to a period of growth, maintaining on that, growing on the other. But if you can have people who can drive or unlock revenue without you doing that autonomously, what I found happened is times where even I was focused on the other company or just exhausted. We went through a huge growth spurt going from $150K a month to $2.5 million a month in the span of 12 months. During some of that time, especially the tail end, just where there's so much chaos and so much complexity and everything's so fast. I mean, there was times where I was even catching my breath a little bit. And some of the growth really was driven still from the people on the team that were superstars. Another big characteristic is they can basically recruit, hire, and manage C-level people, okay? So they're not necessarily, they can be managers themselves, but a big superstar characteristic is they're the person who can hire the actual managers and train the actual managers, which says a lot about them because obviously if you're going to have a manager, they got to be an A player, and they're only going to work for somebody else who they view is above them and that's somebody they can learn from. So that's a superstar. Does that make sense? So this is very big. I've also heard this. They're the one person that can hire the 10 people, right? So if you're doing a new initiative in your business, they're the one person who can hire the entire department, right? That's a superstar. And as you guys are seeing, this isn't an A player. I mean, this is like the next level of an A player. So another big one, they can solve problems completely end-to-end on their own without needing input from you. So an A player is going to be somebody who, it's good. They're like, hey, this is going on. Here's the problem. I intend to do X. What are your thoughts on that, right? So they'll come with a solution, which is a good rule for you guys. You should write this down. It's called the I intend to rule. Like, people should come to you not saying the problem. They should say the problem. I intend to blank. What do you think? Right? That way, you don't have to do the thinking. It's just either yes or no. Does that make sense? But the difference with a superstar is they don't even have to come to you, right? And a lot of times, the problem gets fixed without you even knowing about it. A superstar will call you and say, hey, just want to keep you updated on what's going on. Don't worry. Already fixed it, but here's what happened. You see the difference? And you would agree with what they actually did. Cool? They can also solve problems and innovate from first principles. So what I mean by this is a lot of stuff, like even just good A players on your team, you'll catch them looking, like they'll be the type of people who, and this is not necessarily bad, I'm not poo-pooing A players, but they'll send you a lot of ads or marketing or whatever from other companies in your industry, right? So they're thinking by analogy. Whereas your truly, truly, truly best people are going to be people who can start from the market and reverse engineer, okay? They also have high levels of self-awareness. So, for instance, a lot of people on your team, you have to essentially facilitate their growth, okay? So, they fail, you have to kind of help them reflect, you have to lead them along, and then you have to help them learn the right lesson and move forward. A superstar does that whole process by themselves, right? Now, you should still be there to help guide them and, facilitate it to an extent, but they don't need you. Because think about all of us, okay? All of us, maybe you have a coach, you're in a mastermind like this, you get some feedback, etc. But, we've really had to fail, reflect, learn the lesson, move forward, right? We haven't had somebody holding our hand, teaching us everything to do, right? So superstars can do the same thing. You just do have to give them the time to go through that process themselves. So a key hire, which is a superstar, usually is a key inflection point that unlocks a new stage of growth. So go to the next slide. This is see, my drawing skills are pretty kindergarten-esque, but I tried to chart the growth of our company. And you can see it's a stair-step type of growth pattern, which is very, very common. So y-axis is revenue, 500K, million, 1.5 million. The x-axis is number of years, okay, up until I kind of went beyond present, right? So I just want to give you an idea. Like, the easiest way for me to illustrate this concept is just to kind of tell our story and how we've hired some superstars and the results. So, the first person I had on my team was Sasha, who started as my bookkeeper, eventually has progressed to being our CFO and kind of HR and events and so on and so forth. But really the initial superstar, right? So I had Sasha on the team, but the initial superstar was just me. Okay? So it was me, I had a part-time coach and a part-time EA, and Sasha, who was just doing the books. And just with me and that very, very small team, I was able to get to about 150K a month. Okay, and we'll talk about how I was able to get there, cash collected. So we'll talk about how I was able to get there later in the presentation, actually. If my pricing would have been right, I honestly could have been doing 250K a month by myself. So obviously at that point, I was a little bit bottlenecked. I was doing all the marketing organically. I was doing obviously all the sales. I was doing all the fulfillment, and all the fulfillment was also one-on-one. And I was obviously updating the product. I was doing everything except for admin, EA stuff, and I delegate a few things to a coach. Then I got my first superstar, okay? So this is right around a little bit, it's probably 9 months in, and that's Mitchell, he's in the back. So what happened with Mitchell, you could see there's an inflection point, okay? I brought him on, literally within 30 days, maybe 45 days tops, we were doing 400 grand a month. So 100 for just boom, 4x. And that was hiring one person. Okay? So a lot of times it's I hear people and they're struggling and it's man, we're doing 150, man, next month we hope we can get to 200, and by next year 350. And that's fine, but a lot of times it's all about this inflection point. And a lot of times a key hire especially if you get somebody very, very good, can just, boom, give you a multiple right then and there. Does that make sense? Okay? So, and there could be other issues with your business. Obviously, you have to have an optimal selling system in place, know how to generate leads, have your offer dialed in, et cetera. But a lot of times, and we'll talk about that on the right column, it can just be a superstar hire. So then, as you can see, man, we had explosive growth. So around 500 grand a month, I have my second superstar, which is Brian. He's also in the back. And so I had a conversation with Brian, and Brian, which fits one of the archetypes I'm going to give you later about superstars and kind of how to identify them. But he had been an entrepreneur, he had a business partner, kind of business partner wasn't holding his weight. They had a lot of ups and downs, and I could tell, he's just pretty burned out. And so I happened to have that RCA funnel. Nobody was manning it. It was just on the shelf because we were focused on SDA at the time. I was like, dude, you should just come over and run this. And so from that, and still we're getting a lot of the growth from Mitchell scaling SDA as well. And I was focused on marketing. I was focused on product. I was still involved with the sales and CSM team too. But once I got them on board, both of them growing at the same time, 2021 was just insane. So we went from, in the beginning of 2021, about 500 grand a month, and then we finished at 2.5 million a month. So I mean, just like, and we got there probably, I think, in like September. So really, to be honest, it was about a year, about 12 months to hit all of that growth. And then in year 2, we plateaued pretty much the entire year. We were between 2.1 to 2.3. Can anybody guess why we plateaued that entire year?
Try just so looking. People that that stuff.
Yeah, I would say it is part of that. The main thing is that, Mitchell and Brian were doing great, but at first I was the bottleneck. And the inflection point was unlocked from me adding some superstars. Then at a certain point, and I've found in companies, this can be anywhere depending on your business from $1 million to $3 million a month. Probably I'd say $1 million to $2 million, 2.5 is your superstars. So the people you're really counting on, they get bottlenecked. And you start to we were talking yesterday, just reflecting on Brian's journey, when Brian was like, had 22 direct reports, and he's like, no, dude, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. 22 direct reports. And so that whole time, like, I had kind of gotten the skill set of being able to find superstars. And then that whole year, and so it took me a year to be able to do that, right? So likewise, it took them a year to be able to build their teams under themselves. Does that make sense? And start to cultivate their own superstars. And so from 2.5 to 4 million a month, again, it was like 2.5 in 3 months. Now our best month is 3.9, and we've hit that twice now. And so that whole growth spurt right there was literally just ramping up an effective middle management team. So what I mean by middle management is you have, let's say, Mitchell, and he's leading it. And then on the SDA side, you have a recruiting director, a sales director, client success director. So a C-suite team under him. Does that make sense? So it's almost him basically going through the same process I had to go through and getting those people ramped up. And so I don't know. I mean, obviously we've been scaling pretty steadily month after month in terms of growth. So I don't know what our next bottleneck is going to be. If I had to guess, we could be there for, or maybe 4.7 tops. It's obviously tough when you get to this point. But the next thing that's going to unlock the big bottleneck for us personnel-wise, that inflection point, is going to be somebody to replace me from the marketing. It's going to be also just ramping up and getting our middle management better. And it's also going to be great operators for our partner companies we have equity in. Like, those are the 3 things that it's going to help us get to 6 million a month, 7 million a month, 8 million a month, and so on. So does this make sense? I wanted to show you guys this just since it's easy. When I show you my story, it's a little bit easier to see it. So a few things on the right. I had a talk with Patrick Bet-David. You guys know who PBD is? Yes? So one of the things we were talking about is I was just, trying to get a game plan. We were reverse engineering really how to get to 200-300 million a year. Patrick sold for I think it was between 300 and 400 million. Maybe it was 250, but it was multiple 9-figure exits, sold his insurance company. And so he's also a genius with media. It's probably one of the best conversations I've ever had about social media and where it's going with really anybody. But a big thing we were talking about, we were reverse engineering Closers.io game plan to scale. And he was saying there's 3 levers to growth, okay? 3 impetuses. One is new superstars, right? Obviously, we're covering that. The second one is a new innovative marketing campaign. So I'll give you an example of this. We were running a call funnel, and what we had found with our call funnel at scale is the quality was going way, way down. There's a lot of knockoff call funnels. On top of that, our show rates were ass. All our closes were coming from the setters and not even from people booking the calls through the call funnel. We switched that to an auto webinar. We liquidated about 60-70% of the budget. And then we have our setters still call the opt-ins, and then we have the upgrade process for the buyers. So I presented on this 2 events ago. And that new innovative marketing campaign unlocked probably another 33-40% growth for RCA, and also a lot more profit, probably 100% more profit, doubling the profit, right? So that was a new innovative marketing campaign. The third thing is a new product line or an offering, which is what most people go to in our industry, as you guys know, right? They hit a bottleneck, they don't have the skills to get to the next level, and then it's like, well, let me just start a new business, because they're using the skills they already have to just get right back to that level, opposed to gaining the new skills they need to get to the next level. Does that make sense? So, we hear this all the time, but even oftentimes we fall victim to it. And one exception that I have is when you find a true superstar. Like when I found Brian, I didn't have a big enough opportunity to fit his vision inside of my vision. But thankfully, I had another opportunity where I could really take a back seat and, work a minority of the time, provide the resources, provide the marketing, provide the funnel, but then he could come in with all the work and have a huge percentage of the upside. So that's an exception of when you can start a new product line, because you're really acting as an investor, not necessarily an operator. That person's the operator. But a good example of what you can add in terms of new product line and offering, and you can see an inflection point, is a back end. Like, for instance, with SDA, when we added our back end, we probably added $500,000 a month to top line. So other than that, this is a huge common pitfall. Tons of people, they get to $1 million a month, they think it's really good, they start a new business. So and also, obviously, going through this presentation, superstars can be a shiny object. Sometimes you just need to do more of what you're already doing. So next slide. So how do you find superstars? Next. So you guys have probably heard the adage that A players are already employed, right? I think this is outdated for 2023. So the big thing is, and I do think it's true, but it's not complete. So you've heard A players can do 10x the output of B players. Superstars can do 10x the output, in my opinion, of A players. That's because of their skill set. A lot of times it's just because of their judgment and their decision making. Okay? Like Warren Buffett's the highest paid person, one of the highest paid people in the world, at least, because of what? His judgment, his discernment. So are they sometimes employed? Yes, but oftentimes, especially right now with the culture we're in, a lot of times they're very entrepreneurial. So 3 key archetypes. Number one, a lot of times they're like a freelancer. So you might have somebody who's a media buyer, copywriter. They got 3 to 5 clients. Okay. A big archetype, this is Brian, was a recovering entrepreneur, right? Went through the whole thing, really burned out, almost just needs a time to just breathe for a little bit. That's a big one, and you want to look out for that. The third one is they own a small business, right? And they're just bottlenecked, they can't get to the next level. So those are the 3 things, and I'll tell you how to look for these later. But again, the new adage, they're already employed or entrepreneurs. And a big part of that is just the culture we're in and how easy it is, especially if you're somebody with a high skill set, to just go out there and have, there's somebody who's a superstar I'm tracking right now who has, probably 5 clients, sales team, consulting clients. And, he's probably making decent money, 20, 30K a month. But it's a grind. It's all organic. He's doing all the work himself. And, you have the feast or famine because he's not got a real team. He's not got ads working. I'm just waiting for the time that he burns out and just checking in constantly, right? And that's kind of how you have to think about it, because a lot of times it's going to be a long game. So we'll go next slide. So I heard Hormozi once say that he didn't like to hire the recovering entrepreneurs. Okay? A big thing with this, I think he's taken this back. I think I saw in another content. The big thing with this is, yes, if you hire them and you're not giving them uncapped income potential and you're not giving really them an opportunity to really partner with you at a higher level, then 100% you're going to get a year, 2, they're going to milk all the growth that they can get out of your company, and then they're not going to be able to grow anymore, so they're going to move on, right? So a huge thing is you really have to make these people partners. Now, I'm not advising you just, do that on day one, right? I mean, there can be a vesting period. There can be even just a 90-day, 6-month trial. This could be somebody who grows into this type of position, but they have to have this big opportunity. And there's a guy who's been stuck, I know, you guys probably know who it is, at $1.5 million a month for probably 4 years. And, reads 100 million offers and thinks like, oh, it's just my offer. And then, the reason anybody else is successful, oh, it's just the offer. It's offer. It's like, that's just like the excuse and reason for everything. Realistically, this dude pays nobody on his team probably more than like 20 grand a month, especially not, even the sales reps don't get paid that much, especially non-sales reps, nobody more than 20. And there's just no real leaders on the team. And on top of that, there's just not a big enough vision to fit really amazing people's vision under that person's vision. And that's where the plateau is. So we'll go next slide. So back to the question, how do you actually find them? So a couple things. Simple, but very, very difficult. Build a brand, build an industry-specific network, and then most importantly, and this is where most people are going to fall short, is you have to become the type of person that a superstar wants to work for, okay? So we'll dive into this a little bit. Now, can traditional recruiting work? Okay. Yeah. Can you find these people through traditional recruiting? Well, it depends. The long story short is the ones that are very industry-specific skills, so that you need to know marketing really well in this industry, or you need like a sales director who's run high-ticket sales teams before and has that experience. Even somebody who's able to be your client success director, okay? Very, very difficult to find through traditional recruiting. It's possible, but a CFO, a CTO, positions like that are a little bit more like a CFO is a CFO is CFO, So it's much, much easier to go through a traditional recruiting pathway and find somebody like that. But those industry-specific ones are pretty tough. Still doesn't mean you can't try. So couple reasons it's tough. For one, in our industry, it's pretty hard to build a list of the top-performing companies. I mean, you might know from this mastermind, you might know from just networking, et cetera, the who's who. But, like it's not like you're Fortune 500 and you could just look at the list of companies. It's not like we don't pop up on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You see what I mean? And the other thing is, too, a lot of the superstars, they're entrepreneurial, right? So how do you build a list of those? So it's very, very tough to do like a cold poaching or type of direct outreach type approach, but you can. One thing that works really well is just well-crafted ads and a lot of volume, So take the volume you think you need to hire any sort of position and like 10x that, okay? Do group interviews, and then also treat your job ads, whether that's LinkedIn, Indeed, et cetera, treat those like you're put the same effort into that as your Facebook ads. Okay? Really great headline, really great lead. And also leading with a really big offer in the headline and the lead that includes things like what the pay is, what the opportunities, what the equity is. So you have to have a big offer for these folks. A big way you're doing it right is like when I'll post something on Facebook for a position like this, I'll get a ton of people commenting saying, man, this position's insane. And sharing it or like sending it to people, that's kind of how you're hitting the right nerve with this. Cold poaching obviously works. A big thing I do that works really well for this, and it's so simple, but I just don't think anybody does this, is I'll go through my contacts. So for like WhatsApp, Messenger, Telegram, all of those chat platforms, I'll go through my last 6 months worth of messages and I'll just ask for referrals. And I'll include the big offer, and I'll give a 20 to 30K bonus for the hire, which is a lot. But remember, we're talking like a superstar, somebody who's very hard to find, and somebody who can literally unlock mid 7 or even 8 figures for your business. Okay? Then obviously if you have an audience or list, that helps a lot as well. So we'll go next slide. So I'm going to break each of these down by using our company as an example and things that I think have worked well for us. So number one, we have an excellent brand. Now, are we YouTube famous? No. You know, like Hormozy or somebody at that level, I cannot imagine what level of talent that they get. It's probably outrageously good, but we still have a brand, okay? And so a big thing is we're very, very, like our company's very well known to people sort of in the know. Like people who have been in the industry for a long time, they're experiencing the industry, they know who we are. And a big thing is we become synonymous. This is something Patrick was, really, really big with when he was coaching me, is to make your brand synonymous with a certain amount of terms. So when people think of high-ticket sales, when they think of sales teams, setters, closers, sales recruiting, we almost always come up in the conversation. So a big piece of advice or a big comment I always get when I go to other people's masterminds is they'll say, man, your name comes up all of the time. Or they'll say, man, like when I mention sales or when sales or closers come up, your name comes up every time. Like you've engineered that so well. And so that's part of having a brand. You know, I get like 500, YouTube views a video, but you can still have a brand despite that. A big part is just being a pioneer in your industry. So like, for instance, somebody who, and there's a lot of these people, just like ripping off my ads, ripping off my funnel, like even down to the design, like word for word, and they're doing a sales recruiting offer. Like that person, it's going to be tough for them to really attract a great superstar who's in the know. Because if they're in the know, they're going to just know they're ripping me off. And if they want to work for a company like that, they're just probably going to want to work for our company. So being a pioneer is a big thing. And just being innovative and making being somebody who you're making a unique contribution to your market. Okay. And just, you're raising the standard of the industry. So do you got to be, I don't want you guys to see this and be like, well, I got to either be mega famous or be doing 50 million a year, but you just really have to up level, what your vision for the company is and become a standard of excellence for, your industry. So we'll go next slide. So, couple other reasons. This goes more to the networking side. So because of my sales career, I've been deep in this industry for years. So, I mean, when I was in sales, I sold in this industry. So because of that, my network has become insane. And a lot of the superstars have come from my network. So a couple of the things, like when I was at TF, I spoke with thousands of people in the industry. I coached some of the clients. So I had a ton of relationships there. And also we had a team of 8 players. So this experience led me to with Mitchell. He was a coworker. Brian was a client. Savannah was a coworker. JJ was a coworker. 3 of our portfolio consultants for our equity companies are people who are clients or coworkers from that one experience. So one thing that really clicked for me is I read, it's like it's not Jeff Bezos' autobiography, but it's kind of a biography about him and Amazon. It's like Everything Store. And when he was a full-time employee, right? When his non-compete was up after those 2 years, he literally, and this is pretty ruthless. I don't even think I'm this ruthless. But, this is ruthless. The day his non-compete was up, he poached all of those people. All of them. And just, it was obviously a ton of lawsuits, but decimated that company that he used to work for. I think that's a little aggressive. Like, we never poached anybody from TF, but obviously as they were kind of on the decline and our company was taking off like a rocket ship, we had almost the entire company applied to work with us. And we would never hire anybody unless they quit on their own and then decided to work for, or still wanted to work for us later, but still just goes to show. So another thing, spent a lot of time early on at masterminds. Obviously I run my own mastermind. One of the things Mark Ford talks about is, again, going to industry events and just being putting it in your reticular activating system, right? Like putting it in your awareness. I am on the lookout for young, smart, superstar people. And even at our RCA event last week, just because I've been thinking about this, I had just created the presentation that day. I literally was talking to this guy 20 years old. And normally I probably just would have passed it by, but I was like, this could be a superstar. Like, I need to keep tabs on this guy. This guy's 20. He's already doing this amount of revenue. He's like extremely vivacious, like just tons of energy, very, very smart. You would just be surprised once you put it in your awareness that you will come across a lot of these people at these different types of events. The other thing too is, you might be in an event like this and granted, don't poach your fellow mastermind members, people. That would probably be pretty uncool. But you might be at a trade show or TNC and you start to meet somebody who's working for another company. They're not ready to leave now, but keep tabs on that person. And even if you think they're truly exceptional, one thing that I do is I pay them for consulting just to look at one of our departments and just tell us what, they would do if they were us, right? And just, that could be $1,000, $2,000, but we're starting to, if I want to do business with them eventually, let me do business with them now to a smaller extent. Does that make sense? And so you're just building that relationship and just really keeping tabs. It's like you have a long-term follow-up pipeline with prospects, okay? But you have to, because these people are so rare, all right? And if you wait too long, eventually they're somewhere else or they're going to get too deep in their own business. Another big thing is looking for your clients. And there's tons of limiting beliefs around this. But some of also our best talent has come from our client bases. And I have seen this happen with clients even in the most absolutely unlikely scenarios. So the story I always tell is one guy was looking for a sales manager. I was like, dude, you should ask your client base. And he's like, dude, my client base is dentists. I was like, just ask, or even ask for referrals. And lo and behold, he makes that position, gets a lot of applications, surprisingly, hires several of them as sales reps, and then one becomes the manager. And he was a lead gen agency for dentists. So if you want to, the best way to do it too is just approach it asking for a referral. So we'll go next slide. Another big thing is I'm not afraid to pay what's way above the industry standard and what really makes them a partner, okay? So I'm not saying you should go crazy for all your employees, but I'm talking to somebody who can potentially add 5 to 10 million a year to your business. You have to treat them like partners, and you want to have, always the saying I use, you want to have a quarter of a vineyard opposed to the entire grape, okay? So just to give you some specifics, many of this caliber people for me have started at 15 to 25K a month, provided they're already a superstar. And after a certain period, I want to get them from 300 to 800K a year. Okay. I have I have one person making over 100K a month, another person very, very close. And I would imagine in, a couple of years, I'm going to have multiple people making over 100 grand a month. So again, is that a lot? You might be like, man, that's great. You can pay that. There's no way I could pay that. Just remember that pay is additive to your business. You're not coming out of your pocket from day one and slapping 100 G's a month on the table, but it's additive and it's an uncapped upside. So next slide. So another huge advantage of this, and this is an aside from my experience. One of the reasons I was able to get Mitchell so early and able to get, Gore was around that time too. And he was, obviously ended up being a tremendous leader on our team and the team comedian as well. Is I was doing about 150K a month by myself, cash collected with 90% margins. So how was I doing that? Well, number one, it was all organic. And I'm not saying you should start all organic, but that's what I was doing at the time. I was world-class at selling. So I'd close like 70 to 80% of people. I was selling at a premium price point, so 12 to 18K. Every customer I had, even in the early days, I would sell into a back end that was just working with me one-on-one still more. It was like the back end was like, do you still want to work together? Okay, let's keep working together. So I was at a 50% retention just on that. And I was also doing all the fulfillment, so that limited the cost. And, I had, like I told you earlier, like a couple part-time employees. So a big thing was I was amazing at sales. That allowed me to charge a really good premium price point. It also allowed me to have super high retention on the back end, which was a lot of cash flow, which gave me a lot of money to actually pay superstars. And that's one advantage we've always had, is our business has always been really high margin, really high cash flow. So when it comes to being able to hire the right people, we've never had an issue with it. So the biggest reason is really who I am and who I've become. And so this is like the tough piece of advice for a lot of entrepreneurs, even some people in the mastermind, is you have to become the type of person that these folks want to work for. So I can't tell you like how many times I've been talking to somebody and they might be doing $500,000 a month. And, you know, they're pretty remarkable. But when I talk to this person and I look at the maturity level, I'm just thinking like, dude, I know you want this integrator for your business or this sales director, but nobody who is that caliber is going to work for you. And we'll talk about some reasons why and how you can become the type of person who actually these people want to work for. But it's another reason I never worry about our folks getting poached by our clients or other people is because, man, there's very, very few people out there that are really able to just uphold the standard that I think we are. So another client example as well. I just keep going. So how do you become that type of person that they want to work for? Number one, we already covered this. Be a leader in your industry in some way, shape, or form. So like you should be somebody in your industry who you feel like you're actually raising the standard of your industry. Be innovative, make a unique contribution. Like a few examples of people I think are doing this really well. Obviously, Hormozy, Hyros with Alex Becker, Cardone. If you guys know the Mickelsons, that's a great example. Josiah Grimes, he was a speaker a year or two ago. New Reach Education, they're probably doing about $4 to $6 million a month in the real estate space. So they're behind Pace Morby, Astro Flipping, and so on and so forth. Dr. Pompa in the health space, another one. So every single one of those people is in different industries doing different things. And you can get inspired by others, but you really want to focus on making your own unique contribution, having a big vision, and that's what these folks are attracted to. So we'll go next slide. Another thing. So having a compelling vision that these superstars can fit their vision under yours, okay? So the easiest way to explain this is to explain the problem with the lifestyle business paradox. So let's say you want to make $100,000 a month and chill on the beach, okay? You need to make $300,000 a month, probably to do so, and you have to have one superstar run your business. The fact is that vision and revenue and the growth coming from that isn't big enough to attract those superstars. So what happens, what's funny is people who just want to do $200K a month and chill, a lot of times they just end up with a business entirely predicated on them, at least in this business model. You know, sure, you can be like John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire. He does like $100,000 a month, has a podcast. Totally different. I'm talking this business model. If you want a lifestyle business model or a lifestyle business, it's almost like the paradox is you really need to scale because you have to have a vision big enough to start to hire really, really, really amazing people who can actually run your company with a great C-suite. Does that make sense? So I would say for me, and this is so, like, I would have never guessed this. I would say my optimal, like, if I really wanted to have a lifestyle business, where my business needed me the least was about $1 million to $1.5 million a month. And that's because I had great people under me who were able to actually really run the business. So we'll go next. Be willing to share the pie. We covered that. Make sure the pond is big enough for the fish. And then also just recognize when that fish has become a whale and it needs to be in an ocean. Sometimes people, they grow really fast and they outgrow the opportunities. And you got to keep just moving them into different opportunity vehicles, being very keen on that and staying ahead of it. Have wisdom that they can learn from. Like obviously a big reason people have come to work for me or other leaders in the industry is that they feel like it's going to be a once in a lifetime growth opportunity. Okay. And I know when I was at TF, like that's exactly what Taylor, it's exactly how I felt. I worked with them every single day, one-on-one. For me, it was a once in a lifetime growth opportunity. Would 100% not be where I'm at today without that. Tolerate zero mediocrity. And so literally your team you can't be seen by your team tolerating anything less than 100% A player standards because they'll lose respect for you. Confident, well-spoken, express your ideas clearly. I mean, I know that sounds like the most basic thing ever, but like legit. I mean, you'd be surprised. People even doing $300K a month, $800,000 a month, who it's like, I don't know how you speak, public speak to your team. Like your communication is just so bad. Another big thing and this is one of the biggest ones, is just being emotionally healthy and mature. I know that sounds like the simplest thing ever. But in our industry, there is just so many marketers who are like, 23 years old and just like immature AF, And there's one particular person, I don't think they're here, but I think they're in the mastermind, who is doing like $700,000 a month. And very brilliant person, great executor, but just very, very, very immature. And I've seen this person just really struggle for a long time to try to find somebody who can actually be an integrator for their company so they don't have to do literally everything and work 16 hours a day. But in order to do so, they're either just going to have to wait and get older and get more mature, or just do a lot of emotional work inside. And believe me, I've seen 22-year-olds who are exceptional and really mature and great leaders. So it's not impossible, but it's something that I've seen quite often. So here's the last thing I'll say, is you have to be there to serve the business, not the other way around. So in 2021, we were about to take on an equity partner, and I was working out with them in Puerto Rico, and they said something along the lines of like, we were just like talking business, and they're like, yeah, like the first red flag was they called their employees minions. And so, no, it was not minions. It was slaves. Yeah. So they said, look, like these people, I think they said like, have one of your slaves just do X, Y, and Z. I was like, okay. And then the other thing they said was, these are brilliant 8-figure people. I respect a lot of their skill sets in other ways. And then the other thing too is, I was asking for advice on something, because at this stage I thought they were people I still wanted to ask advice from for some reason. And, they wrote me this whole thing about how, my business is to serve me and no one else. And, at the end of the day, they're there to fulfill a role, and, it's all about your business fulfilling your needs. And I think obviously most of you guys can tell, like, that's not what a great business is, to just fulfill all of your needs. You would be surprised, though, in this industry, how many business owners solely have their business to fulfill their needs. Now, I'm not saying, like, obviously you got in business for a better life. I'm not saying sacrifice everything and live miserably, but the business should have its own needs, and you should be there to serve the business, and really who? The customers of your business. This is basic shit, but seriously, like, especially in our industry, it's a huge issue. And especially with this topic, it's a huge issue. So superstars want to be a part of something bigger than any one person, okay, than the founder or the guru or whatever it's going to be. And they're going to be turned off a lot by this. And people who, they do the bare minimum, they're constantly traveling, partying, taking time off. Like, it's obvious the business is there to serve them, not the customers, okay? They don't care about being the best, and, they're putting their needs above the customers, which is the point of the business. So you guys want to do some discussion? What you got, dog?
Okay, so when you're talking about superstars, first of all, great presentation. My question is, we're at a point where we're doing well, but I haven't scaled because we've been working on our fulfillment, getting things dialed in, because I refuse to sacrifice the brand and my name for the sake of just making sales, because we can sell all day. We can sell all day. In terms of identifying superstars, the ones that you were talking about were like driving revenue, but what about just like operators that just make things more efficient?
Yeah, that's why I said drive or unlock. And we have more than just the two I mentioned. It was hard to chart because that second big explosiveness was a lot of new middle management coming in. But, somebody who's a superstar is our head of recruiting. We were always, so Kate, and she's here if you want to talk to her, but we were always constantly having issues every single month with scaling the recruiting, or if we did scale, the recruiting quality going down. It was like, and I just thought it was our business. I was like, man, it's just done for you. It's like every time you try to scale, it's a freaking bitch. And then, lo and behold, we had a different person in there, and that person unlocked an entirely new amount of revenue growth, right? So no, it can be both. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Was there anything else to that?
Nah, I'm just thinking.
Cool. What else?
My question is, thank you. Hi, my name is Ashley Kirkwood. We run a company called Speak Your Way to Cash. My question is, can you speak to some of the profit share models that you used in the beginning and how that's evolved to really keep them dialed in with unlimited earning potential?
Yeah. So the way I would think about it is it's not, I'll answer the question, but I'll kind of give you more of like a meta way to think about it. It's all, and the same thing with like any position. It's just really all about the on-track earnings, okay? So it's not necessarily the percentage or this and that. It's really just the on-track earnings. Now, how do you figure that out? I understand. Okay, first of all, you need to know what's relatively standard for that role, okay? And you can only know what that is by first defining the role. Like a lot of people are like, what do I pay a COO? It's like, well, what is the COO doing? And then, sometimes somebody's referring to a COO as somebody who's going to run sales and fulfillment. Another time it's like, okay, no, you just really need to hire like an ops manager and a couple VAs. So first, like define the role and then understand what the industry standard is for that role in terms of pay. Now, the easiest way to figure that out is just to ask this mastermind because, it's not like we have a ton of research on our industry. It's very, very new. And then once you figure that out and you understand kind of what's the standard, this is what I do very differently, I think, than anybody else, is I really just understand the person in their story and what they've made before, like what their income trajectory has been. And then I just try to come up with something that's a win for them. And generally, it's maybe matching or a little bit less than matching what they used to make with enough upside to get them to make what's interesting, right? And so it can really vary. Like it can be somebody who's making, I'll give you a recent example, $20K a month. And then, eventually the upside in the near term is going to be 30 to 50, and then potentially maybe 50 to 100. Not maybe, potentially if the person succeeds, it will be 50 to 100 plus, right? And so that's just what I know is a win for that person. It also melds with that industry standard, but it's all customized for the most part. Now, obviously, if they're similar roles, like if you have two companies and you have two sales directors, okay, at that point, you should standardize that a little bit so that they don't talk and there's wildly different pay. So generally, it's a percentage of profit. The way we do it is it can be, I have people at 1%, I have people at 10%. So it's generally, though, cash minus refunds, minus ads, minus labor, and then minus overhead. And if you need help defining that, we can send you over how we define our P&L. We have a training for it. And then that gives me net operating income. So net operating income doesn't count the mastermind. Like if I buy a mastermind, it doesn't count like my rent. It doesn't count insurance. My personal insurance is for like my captive and stuff like that. So it's not my true P&L, but it's kind of like the operating P&L for the company. And then all the percentages are based off that. I never do, doing a revenue override, I just don't see any point in that. It just makes no sense to me. Because the person's going to get paid proportionally more of the profit as your company's profit goes down, which is inevitable at scale. And then you're going to have to go renegotiate that, and then they're going to get pissed. One thing about comp structures, Charlie Munger talks about super deprival syndrome. Does anybody know what that is? It's basically like you've heard the adage, if you give if you for a salesperson, if you say, hey, if you hit these numbers, you'll get a Ferrari. You'll get like decent performance. But if you give them the Ferrari and you say, if you don't hit these numbers, we're going to take it away, they will dance to keep the Ferrari, right? And so the reason that is you probably know, is like we're more afraid of going backwards or losing something than we actually are gaining it a lot of times. And so a big thing with people's pay is try to create structures in which will not back you into a corner or have built-in reevaluations or reset after a certain time frame, because it is, you could lose a really good person because people just freak out, super deprival syndrome. They freak out when they go backwards. It's like there's so much cognitive dissonance. Like, it is crazy. And I get it. Like, I mean, for me, like, I don't want to go backwards. So I mean, I do get that. But it is one thing, make sure you don't box yourself in a corner. So there's reevaluation periods. You can make the bonus first based on 30 days after you get kind of oriented with their performance. Then you can give them some profit share. And you can kind of project that model out. But a lot of people, especially in the 1 to 3 million stage, create comp structures that break in the 10 million stage. I mean, that happened with us with our head of recruiting, to be honest, is just like wildly broken comp structure, right? And also a delusion about, like, you know, worth, to be honest, because of the comp structure. And so it's just not good for anybody. And what would have been right is creating those reevaluation periods where there can be resets and just heavy setting those expectations.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Cool. Got a question over here to your right.
Below.
Hey.
Panama boys.
Well, now we're Panama boys. I mean, they call us Montreal boys, but we moved out. But anyways, thank you. Amazing presentation. Question is, I have 2 questions. Number 1, how did you become a brand leader or like a industry pioneer? Is it, yes, the product's amazing, but was it through word of mouth? Because you said you're not popular on YouTube. Was it pure word of mouth, like client results, and then you just became that industry leader?
Yeah, so I think it's a few things. Number 1, when you spend $800,000 a month on ads, you just serve a lot of impressions, man. So, like, that's a big part. I get stopped. Like, it's so funny. Like, if you're actually famous, you probably get stopped and people are shell-shocked and they want to meet you. Like, when I get stopped, it's just like, dude, I see your ads. And then, like, they don't even want to talk to me. They don't even know what I do. They're just like, dude, I see your ads. And they're just like, you know, like, no conversation, whatever. Like, I'll walk into a mastermind and it's always like if I go to masterminds now that aren't mine, it's just like, dude, I always see your ads. I mean, I have, you know, old lady in the elevator in my building was like, I see your ads, you know, all the time. See those ads, they're running around. So, like, it's just, yeah, that's part of it, right? So that helps. Those impressions help build brand, right? Billie Jean's really big on that. Me and him have chatted a lot the last 90 days just about different stuff like that. So, yeah, a lot of it's impressions. I would say the biggest part, man, was honestly just great product and, like, word of mouth. Like, for instance, we're also in a space where we're helping other coaches and leaders and people in the space, right? I'm not going to lie, that helps. But, like, if you look at Gym Launch, obviously they had crazy amounts of referrals because their product was really good. And I know their CEO now, who's obviously a superstar, like, they sold the company by making that guy CEO. He was a client. And his wife, who's a CEO, also a client, right? And so I would say just really great product, really great word of mouth. That's a big part of it. Like, I mean, in the early days, I don't know what it is now, but, like, man, there was a time where we were doing $300,000-$400,000 a month just from word of mouth, right? And so that's a really, really big part of it. Then also it's like becoming, you know, every space kind of has, like, the gurus, right? So, you know, you got, like, for us, it's like, you know, Rich Sheffrin, the Frank Kern, Dean, you know, all those people. If you can become sort of their dedicated service provider for category, that works, right? So we were able to tap into that. So I don't know, you know, how that applies to you, but it could, you know, you could probably finagle it to sort of fit that a little bit. So another way is obviously content. Like, we haven't really done that, but content. So what? A lot of ads, content, product, word of mouth, working with industry leaders, and also just like one thing Patrick was big on. Now, granted, this was 2014, 2015, but he told me when he started on YouTube, he wanted to own the word entrepreneur. So I don't know how it is now, but I know at a certain point, if you typed in entrepreneur, like he had a lot of the listings on that word, right? So target some words that you can own. But I would say the biggest thing is, like, also just get involved with, you know, you guys with financial advisors, right? So you probably do a lot of stuff in this industry, and you want to be contributors and hopefully speakers to events like this, right? Because that way you can get in front of a lot of people, share your success as coaches, consultants, and really doing the info model, right? But also really get in other events and masterminds and also hold your own mastermind in y'all's other industry too. I mean, financial advising, and just become somebody who's a thought leader there and really start to build your brand and do it in a different way than, you know, a lot of people do leads for financial advisors too. Like there's a lot of people, you got to do it in a different way that's just new and a little bit fresh.
Got it. Thank you. And my other question is, when you market on, let's say, job boards, or even when you send it to your network, how do you market the pay? Like, for example, when you hire a closer, you say, yeah, here's the 10 to 30 to 50 grand a month. But how do you market the pay for hiring a superstar?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Like if I'm texting somebody, I'll be like, hey, you know, and again, I always write a personalized message to every single person I ask for referrals. So like you guys get the messages from your friends that are like, they copy and pasted a message of like asking if you know so-and-so for this position. You're like, fuck, dude, I thought we were friends. Like you're like just going to spam me, you know? So like literally like I write a personalized message to every single person. And usually I just say, you know, I'll just keep it short, 2-3 sentences. I'll put the income, I'll be like, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z position, income opportunity, this to this. If you know anybody, I'll give you 20 grand. You know?
Well, what's the this to this? That's what I'm like, because it's an uncapped, and then like.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, I'm not going to say, yeah, I mean, I'll just give kind of the initial range, you know, like 30 to 60 or whatever. Got it. I might say 30 to 60. Eventually, this person could make 7 figures. You know, something like that. I think you're overthinking it a little bit. What you got?
So, my question is observing how you've been building your superstar team. Like you bring in these superstars who already have a little bit of traction, kind of proving themselves, and then it seems like you bring in tadpoles into your company to kind of grow them. Like
tadpoles? Ooh, tadpoles?
Well, you know how tadpoles grow into fish. Let's say the fish are superstars.
Oh, I
the
see.
tadpoles are like just stars. Or caterpillars, whatever you want to call them. They grow into butterflies, but you get the concept, right?
Yeah, it's a bunch of worms.
I'm one of those guys. So is that a conscious thing? Because for me, I'm thinking about building my sales team. When I hire, let's say, 8 to 10 closers, I want one of those guys to move up to a sales manager. Or do I bring the sales manager out and then he levels up quick? Like I'm just trying to find the strategy between like building, like growing superstars and then recruiting them and finding them.
Yeah, it's not an either or, it's a both. Let me say this. Like I was a very like promote internally type of person just because, man, I've seen so many people just cross their fingers and hire a sales manager based on their resume. And then the sales manager is just like ass. I mean, in this industry, it happens so much because a lot of times like running a real estate team, a insurance sales team, it's just not the same. And so to have somebody just come directly in from outside of this industry, it's tough. Now, what you can do is, and generally, like this is kind of how I've shifted my thinking a little bit, is yes, I will look outside, which is why we've started doing some sales manager placement, I think just for Boardroom, if you guys are interested in that. But we will look outside, but you always want to give the person a 60-day ramp period to prove themselves on the phones and even potentially start as a setter, you know? Because if they're going to lead the team, they need to be able to inspect what they expect. So they need to be able to know how the setting works, the ins and outs of being a setter, and be a good setter. Now, you could maybe have them skip setter, but at least be a closer. And, I mean, you bet your ass, they better be able to close at least as good as your best person, you know? Otherwise, like, why do you have them leading their team? Because your entire team is going to be a reflection of that person. So even if you do hire from the outside, you want to bring up, but your question was, Bridger, how do I think about hiring from the outside versus promoting internally? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you know, obviously, no matter what, you want to hire an A player for the role as you're recruiting for the roles. Oftentimes what happens is you find somebody who you're like, it's either they're overqualified or you do get this feeling of like, man, this person, you know, eventually they're going to outgrow this role. A lot of times what we'll find is somebody might apply for the sales manager position or something like that, and they're just not there yet. We have to sell them on the vision. and put them on a growth track to be able to get there. And say, look, like right now we don't have a position open where you're going to make 50 grand a month or something like that, right? However, like here's what people have done in our company. You know, like Peter, for instance, started as a closer. Now he's working with our equity clients, right? So like that's, and some part of that is he was able to see the growth, come in, crush it, et cetera. So it really depends. I mean, I really like, I think oftentimes when you bring in a superstar, it's somebody even from the beginning, when you hire them initially, like they're already just a stud. And they just might need to go through that ramp period. But some people who are with you for a long time, if you really invest in them and really put a lot of work into them, they'll develop and then they'll surprise you. So, I mean, it's kind of both, dude. That's it. I'm getting kicked off.
All right, let's hear
All right.
for Mr.
Thank you, guys.